I struggled to come up with a way to begin such a huge and important topic as interdependence. In a world as fractured and divided as the one we live in, how can we become one? In my research, I found this reflection on the seventh principle. Our seventh principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence, is a glorious statement. Yet we make a profound mistake when we limit it to merely an environmental idea. It is so much more. It is our response to the great dangers of both individualism and oppression. It is our solution to the seeming conflict between the individual and the group. Our seventh principle may be our Unitarian Universalist way of coming to fully embrace something greater than ourselves. The interdependent web, expressed as the spirit of life, the ground of all being, the oneness of all existence, the community-forming power, the process of life, the creative force, even God, can help us develop that social understanding of ourselves that we and our culture so desperately need. It is a source of meaning to which we can dedicate our lives. Reverend Forrest Gilmore, Executive Director of Shalom Community Center, Bloomington, Indiana. Perhaps by thinking of what we are made of will help. We are stardust, the elements in our bodies made up of the atoms created in the fusion of stars up until iron, whose atomic number is 26. In order to create the heavier elements up to number 92, uranium, a supernova is required. Supernovas usually occur at the last stage of a star's life when the outward pressure of the fusion reaction slows down to a point to where it can no longer overcome the gravitational forces of its mass. The core collapses and the star explodes. It is one of the most powerful astronomical events in the universe, an extraordinary example about changes that bring about new life. But change does not always have to come from destruction. In fact, the natural world is a story of harmony and balance, with each species contributing in ways that are counterintuitive a lot of the time. When America settled the West in order to protect livestock herds, wolves were slaughtered by the tens of thousands until none remained in the continental U.S. by the 1920s. Settled sounds like a good word, a great idea. Meddled is a more apt word. Yellowstone National Park is the oldest national park we have, founded March 1st, 1872. The last wolf was eliminated from Yellowstone in 1926, and the ecosystem was on the verge of total collapse when the wolves were reintroduced in 1995, thanks to animals from our friends in Canada. The elk and deer populations were out of control, eating everything in sight and having huge die-offs in the winter due to lack of forage. The Park Service determined through scientific study that it was necessary for wolves to return, but the outcry from the ranchers was extreme, and the return remains controversial 30 years later. Wolves multiply and don't remain in the park. So why take the risk? The scientific term is trophic cascade, an ecological phenomenon where the addition or removal of a top predator or other keystone species causes a ripple effect throughout the food web, altering the populations of prey species and in turn affecting lower trophic levels. Trophic generally refers to things related to nutrition, food, or feeding habits. With the wolves removed, the elk, deer, and other ungulates grazed everything away in the valleys and hillsides. The wolves changed their behavior almost immediately. Elk and deer avoided the valleys and gorges where they could be trapped easily. Aspen, willow, and cottonwood trees rebounded. In some areas, the height of the trees quintupled in just 6 years. Migratory birds and songbirds returned. Beavers increased and did what beavers do, building dams that further changed and enhanced the ecosystem. Their dams create habitats for otters, muskrats, ducks, fish, reptiles, and amphibians. The wolves killed coyotes, so rabbit and mice populations rose, and that increased populations of hawks, weasels, foxes, and badgers. Ravens and bald eagles came down and fed on the carrion the wolves left behind. Bears benefited not only from the carrion, but also from the berries that now grew in more abundance. More bears reinforced the effect of wolves by killing the calves as deers also. One of the most amazing things about the reintroduction of wolves is that it changed the Yellowstone River itself. It meandered less because of reduced bank erosion due to tree roots and undergrowth stabilizing the banks. Channels narrowed and more pools formed. Regenerating forests stabilized the banks so they collapsed less often, and there was less runoff from the valley sides. From seeing how important just one species is to an ecosystem, it isn't a far leap for me to understand that the protection of different human populations is important also. The LGBTQIA+ community are essential to the healthy functioning of our society, just as immigrants and our relationships with foreign nations also greatly affects our well-being. Transgender people are under attack because of fewer than 10 transgender females competing in NCAA sports. There are 235,735 people competing in NCAA sports, so I believe this is an agenda, not an issue, a way to attack an entire community, because there weren't no trannies when I grew up, so it's got to be stopped now. Sorry, Bubba, but for all of human history there have been transgender people. They just stayed in the shadows to avoid persecution and their lives being threatened. I think that because of the progress made by the lesbian and gay communities, other LGBTQIA+ people thought they would be more accepted by society at large, and that is why they have become more visible. The pushback has been more extreme than anyone expected, so our response should also be stronger. As a parent of a trans person, I find it difficult to speak up when I hear a stranger spouting misinformation and hatred. It isn't easy for me to be an ally. I can't imagine what it's like to be one of the persons being attacked. I pray for the strength to speak up and for the safety of all marginalized communities and people. I have tried to separate immigrants from foreign relations, but I see now that was foolish because immigrants are foreign citizens. We have a situation where goods from elsewhere are produced much cheaper because the workers in those countries are exploited for corporate profits. We in the U.S. consume more than we could ever produce, and it would be impossible to ever get enough factory workers even if we could snap our fingers and magically make the factories appear overnight instead of it taking 5 to 10 years to build them. I saw a survey that said 80% thought that Made in America was a good idea, but only 10% said they wanted to work in a factory. China, a communist country, produces nearly 1/3 of the world's goods, while their population of 1.4 billion is only about 17% of the world total. The U.S. produces 16% of the world's goods with a population of only 340 million. But the population of North and South America together is about 1.5 billion. Ronald Reagan said that the importance of foreign aid cannot be understated. If we had strong democracies to our south with vibrant economies that respected human rights and strove to improve the lives of their citizens, would we need to import so much from China? Would we have an immigration problem if people were safe in their homes? Democracies, while not perfect, have a much better track record than communist countries when it comes to human and civil rights. If we in the U.S. step away from building strong friends, we will never be able to go it alone. Isolationism fails every time. 340 million versus 9 billion will never work. We must build relationships with care and respect, mutuality and justice, not only for the people, but for the planet as a whole. Is it progress if the earth becomes unlivable? How much more time do we have to ignore climate change before we reach a tipping point we can't recover from? Global sea levels rose more than expected last year, climbing by 0.23 inches, according to NASA satellite data. Melting ice sheets and glaciers account for parts of the rise, but the biggest factor was an unusual amount of ocean warming that led to expanded water volume. The annual rate of sea level rise has more than doubled since records began in 1993. Sea levels have climbed by a total of 4 inches since then. The seas continue to rise while our leaders bury their heads further in the sand under orders from their donors with vested interests in the way things are now. The donors don't just want nothing to change, they want to repeal what little progress we have made. How many more chemicals can we allow in the waters before life stops? I want to return to the wolves. Everyone has heard of alpha wolves, the head male and female that lead the pack. The term alpha has connotations of force of will and subjugation. The term alpha wolf was first coined in a flawed study of captive wolves who were unrelated and penned up in a small enclosure. That would be like alien anthropologists visiting a maximum security prison and basing their beliefs about the human race on what they found there. Instead of calling them alphas, mother and father is an accurate description because that is what they are. They work together to lead the pack. The male does not always have the final say. They work for the best interests of their family as a team. And then there is the myth of the lone wolf. Wolves are social animals just as we are, and they do not function as well when they are alone. One wolf cannot take down an elk, just like one group cannot change society. John Wayne coming in and fixing everything in a matter of days is pure fantasy. We must work together with others who share similar goals. How will we change society? By forcing others to come to see things our way? Or by opening a dialogue with those who oppose what we stand for and finding common ground? I, of course, believe I am right about most of my opinions, but so does the other side. We must stop throwing stones, sit down at the table, and have a civil discussion. How we get there from here is beyond me at this time, but I am thinking about it. A mutually accepted news source is a fantasy of mine that I hope does not remain a fantasy. Corporations have figured out that the way to quick profits is to divide. The first who figures out how to grow by bringing people together should surpass the bringers of strife. May you find peace on our journey, for we are all in this together.